I remember the exact night it happened. The room was dim, the air heavy, and my pulse pounded so hard I thought my chest would break open. My husband was away on a business trip, and I was not alone. I was pressed against a body that was not his. His hands slid over my skin with a hunger that stole my breath, and my own lips betrayed every vow I had ever made. I had told myself it was love, that I was starved and finally being fed. But in that moment, as his mouth trailed over me, I did not feel love. I felt lust dressed up in lies, and it was burning so bright I could not see the destruction it was about to cause. Before I go deeper, let me pause for a moment to thank all of you. To my loyal subscribers, I see you, and I am truly grateful for the fuel you give this channel every single day. To all my new and returning viewers who have not yet subscribed, thank you for being here. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because it is your support that keeps me sharing these raw and transparent stories. And please, share your thoughts in the comments below as soon as you finish this hook. Your words matter, and they keep these stories alive. Now, let me take you back and tell you how it all began. My name is Rachel. I am an American white woman in my mid-30s, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my husband, Mark. We had been married for 10 years. From the outside, we looked like the picture-perfect family, 2 kids, a neat home, the kind of couple people thought had it all figured out. But behind closed doors, things were not nearly as perfect. Our marriage had settled into routine, and the spark that once set us on fire had dimmed into habit. Mark is a good man. He works hard, provides for us, and has never once given me reason to doubt his loyalty. But somewhere along the way, I began to feel invisible. We shared a bed, but it felt cold. We had conversations, but they were practical: bills, kids, groceries. I craved passion, attention, something that reminded me I was still alive as a woman, not just a wife and a mother. That is when Eric entered my life. Eric was nothing like Mark. He was bold, confident, and carried himself with an energy that lit up every room he walked into. I met him at the gym. At first, it was innocent, quick hellos, casual small talk between sets. But then his eyes lingered longer, his compliments sharper, more personal. He noticed things Mark had stopped noticing: the way I wore my hair, the way my body curved, the way I laughed when I let my guard down. I told myself it was harmless, that I just liked the attention. But harmless turned into dangerous the night he offered to walk me out after a late workout. The parking lot was nearly empty, the night air crisp against my skin. When I reached my car, he leaned in just close enough that I could smell his cologne, warm and intoxicating. "You deserve to be looked at," he whispered, "to be wanted." I should have walked away. I should have pulled back. Instead, my body betrayed me before my mind could catch up. I let him kiss me. It was quick, sharp, a taste of fire on my lips, and it changed everything. After that night, I could not stop thinking about him. I told myself I was in control, but every time his name appeared on my phone, my heart raced in ways it had not in years. Messages became calls, calls became secret coffee dates, and coffee dates turned into excuses to meet when I knew Mark would not suspect. The first time Eric touched me beyond that kiss, it was in the back seat of his car. Rain pelted the windows as we sat parked in a dark corner of the lot. He pulled me close, and I felt a rush of adrenaline so powerful it drowned out every thought of right and wrong. His hands were rough, his mouth demanding, and for a moment, I convinced myself this was what love felt like again: intense, thrilling, undeniable. But the guilt followed me home like a shadow. That night, I climbed into bed beside Mark, who kissed my forehead before falling asleep, unaware of the betrayal written across my skin. I stared at the ceiling, torn between shame and desire. I told myself I was falling in love with Eric, that I had found something Mark could no longer give me. But deep inside, a quiet voice kept whispering, "This is not love. This is lust." And lust never stays hidden for long. The affair moved fast after that. We found reasons to see each other: hotel rooms, stolen afternoons, even moments squeezed into the back of his truck when time was short. Each meeting felt like fire, reckless and consuming. I told him things I had not said out loud in years. He made me feel alive, wanted, irresistible. But afterward, when the heat faded, I felt the crushing weight of what I was risking. Mark began to notice. He asked why I was always on my phone, why I suddenly worked out so late, why my laughter sounded different. I lied, of course. I told him I was just trying to take care of myself, that he was imagining things. But inside, I could feel the cracks spreading in my carefully built facade. I was living a double life, devoted wife and mother by day, reckless lover by night. And for a while, I convinced myself I could balance both. But deep down, I knew the truth: fire always burns out of control when you feed it with lies. And mine was only just beginning to spread. The deeper I sank into Eric's world, the more my life began to split in two. There was the version of me that Mark and the kids saw, the devoted wife and mother who smiled through family dinners, packed lunches, and sat in the stands at soccer games. Then there was the other me. The one who checked her phone obsessively, who painted her lips red before slipping out at night, who shivered with anticipation at the thought of Eric's hands. Balancing those two lives was like walking on a wire. Every lie I told Mark was another step across a canyon that I knew could swallow me whole if I slipped. Eric and I grew bolder. What started as stolen kisses in the shadows became whole afternoons wrapped in sheets at a cheap motel just off the highway. I told Mark I was working extra hours, or that I was running errands. He believed me. He always trusted me. And that trust made every betrayal cut deeper inside my own chest. I thought being with Eric would make me feel alive, but more often, I felt like I was drowning. He had a way of pulling me into his orbit, demanding, intoxicating, relentless. When we were together, the rest of the world blurred. His voice was low and commanding, his touch filled with hunger that never seemed satisfied. With him, I felt like a woman again, not just a wife who had been overlooked. But when it ended, when I drove home with my hair messy and my heart pounding, I felt the guilt pressing down like a stone tied around my neck. Mark noticed. Of course he did. He would look at me across the dinner table with narrowed eyes, as if studying me for answers. "You have been distracted lately," he said one night as he passed me the salt. "Is everything all right?" I forced a smile. "I am fine. Just tired. Work has been a lot lately." He nodded, but I could see the doubt flicker in his eyes. That was the moment paranoia crept in. Suddenly, every glance from Mark felt like an interrogation. Every question seemed loaded. I began hiding my phone, deleting messages, memorizing lies before speaking them aloud. It was exhausting. Yet, every time Eric called, I went running back. I told myself it was love. That he was the missing piece I had been waiting for. But little by little, cracks began to show in Eric's perfect illusion. One night, after a long day, I met him at the motel. He seemed different, edgy, restless. When I asked what was wrong, he brushed it off, but his phone buzzed constantly on the nightstand. He ignored it at first, but when I glanced at the screen, I caught a woman's name flashing across it. I froze. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice sharp. He pulled the phone away. "No one. Just a friend." A friend. I almost laughed. It was the same word I had used 100 times when Mark asked me about Eric. In that moment, I realized something I had refused to see: if he could make me his secret, he could easily be someone else's too. Still, I stayed. That was the power of lust. It blinded me to every red flag, every warning. I told myself I did not care if there was another woman. I told myself what we had was special, different. But late at night, when I lay awake beside Mark, I began to wonder if Eric was whispering the same lies to someone else, in some other dark motel room. The weight of it all began to crush me. I would wake up sweating from nightmares of Mark finding out. In my dreams, he would stand in the doorway, tears streaming down his face as he asked me why. And no matter how many times I woke up and told myself it was only a dream, the truth was waiting. Because secrets always find a way to the surface. The tension in our home grew unbearable. Mark started pulling away. He stopped reaching for me at night, stopped joking with me the way he used to. It was as if he sensed the distance but could not name it. And in his silence, I found myself running harder toward Eric, as though the fire could somehow fill the void I was creating at home. But the fire was burning me alive. One evening, as I slipped into Eric's truck in the parking lot of the gym, I caught my reflection in the window. I did not recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were dark, lined with guilt, her lips trembling with shame. She looked desperate. And for the first time, I asked myself, what if this is not love at all? What if this is only lust feeding on my emptiness? But then Eric kissed me, hard and unrelenting, and the question vanished under the weight of his touch. That was the cycle: doubt, then desire. Guilt, then fire. And I was trapped in it, spinning faster every day. I told myself I could keep the balance. That Mark would never know. That Eric would always be mine. But deep down, I knew the truth. My double life was not sustainable. The lies were piling too high, the guilt too heavy. And Eric, well, he was hiding something. Something I was about to discover in a way that would shatter every illusion I had built. Because love is patient, love is kind. Lust, on the other hand, is a ticking clock. And mine was about to run out. The end did not come quietly. It came like a storm breaking open the sky, tearing through every lie I had woven. I had convinced myself that Mark would never find out, that I was clever enough to hide the truth forever. But secrets are not built to last. And mine was no exception. It was a Tuesday night when my world came crashing down. Mark had been distant for weeks, moving around me like a ghost in our own home. I thought maybe he had given up asking questions. But that night, when I came home later than usual, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, his hands folded, his face pale. My phone was on the table in front of him. I froze. He looked up at me, his eyes hollow, broken. "Who is Eric?" My throat went dry. I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my chest. He held up my phone, screen unlocked. "You left it on the counter." The messages were right there. I could not stop reading. "Tell me the truth, Rachel." "How long?" There was no more hiding. No more lies. The fire I had fed so recklessly had burned straight into my marriage. Tears stung my eyes. "Months," I whispered. "It has been months." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, I saw something I had never seen before: devastation. Not anger. Not rage. Just raw, bone-deep heartbreak. "You made love to me," he said, his voice trembling, "while you were thinking about him. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To hold my wife, and know she has already given herself to someone else?" His words pierced through me like knives. Because he was right. There had been nights when my body was with him, but my mind was elsewhere. And there is no deeper betrayal than that. For the next hour, I confessed everything. The gym. The motel. The truck. Every sordid detail spilled out of me like poison I could no longer hold. And Mark listened. Silent. Stone-faced. Dying inside with every word. When I finally stopped, he stood up and walked out of the house without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed through me like a final judgment. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, shaking, sobbing, choking on my own guilt. For the first time, I saw it clearly. This was not love. It had never been love. Eric was lust disguised as passion, emptiness disguised as fulfillment. And I had thrown away the man who truly loved me for someone who never could. The days that followed were unbearable. Mark barely spoke to me. He slept in the guest room. He avoided my touch. I tried to reach him, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but every time I looked into his eyes, I saw only pain. And as if my shame was not heavy enough, the truth about Eric surfaced too. One night, I called him, desperate for comfort. But a woman answered his phone. Her voice was sharp, furious. "Do you know who I am? I am his girlfriend. We have been together for years. And you are not the first woman he has done this with." The line went dead, but her words rang louder than any scream. I was not special. I was not loved. I was just another conquest in a string of lies. The fire I thought was love had been nothing but lust, a cheap flame he had already lit for others. It shattered me. But in that shattering, something shifted. For the first time, I stopped chasing Eric. I blocked his number. I deleted every message, every photo. I let him go. Because now, I understood what I had traded for him, and it was far more valuable than his hollow promises. But letting him go did not heal the wound I had left at home. Mark and I sat in silence for days before he finally spoke. His voice was low, broken. "I do not know if I can ever look at you the same way again. You killed something in me, Rachel. Something I do not know how to get back." I wept. I told him I was sorry. I told him I would do anything, everything, to prove my love for him. But I also knew he did not owe me forgiveness. Weeks turned into months. The kids asked questions we did not want to answer. Friends noticed the change but did not press. Slowly, painfully, we began to talk again. At first, it was only about the children, about bills. But then, one night, when I broke down crying in the kitchen, Mark finally reached out and pulled me into his arms. It was not passion. It was not fire. It was brokenness holding brokenness. But it was real. "I cannot promise I will forget," he whispered. "But I want to try. Because I still love you. Even after everything, I still love you." That was the moment I realized love is not about fire and lust and reckless passion. Love is about forgiveness. It is about fighting through the wreckage, choosing each other even when it hurts. The road back was not easy. Therapy. Tears. Nights where the silence was so heavy I thought it would crush us. But slowly, brick by brick, we began to rebuild what I had destroyed. I had called it love when I was with Eric, but it was never love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is Mark, sitting across from me months later, holding my hand despite the scars I had carved into his heart. And as I tell this story now, I do not pretend to be the hero. I was the villain. I betrayed the only man who truly loved me. But in his forgiveness, I found redemption. And in his arms, I finally understood what love really is.